In Sinners, twin brothers return to 1930s Mississippi, open a juke joint, and fight vampires. On the surface, it's a genre-bending horror film about black resilience and the power of the blues. But the juke joint isn't a party venue. It's a funeral, and the film knows it. Every frame of that transcendence scene, ancestors appearing, the building catching fire while everyone keeps dancing, confirms what Coogler is really saying. This is the last time, the last church, the last night before the soul dies. This video is about what Sinners is really saying, beneath the vampire genre, beneath the blues celebration. Because it's not asking, can they survive the night? It's asking, what did Black America trade for survival? By the end, you'll see it too. Welcome to the burning glass, where concentrated light reveals what's hidden. Beneath the genre surface, Coogler has buried a provocation. The Great Migration offered survival at the cost of the soul. Economic integration into white systems was the invitation that let evil in. And the blues, the music that summons ancestors, is the last surviving form of African sacred tradition in America. We'll trace this through 4 threads. What the screenplay reveals that the film only implies, what the North made of the twins, the economic trap that forces the door open, and the war between 2 churches that determines who keeps their soul. Before arriving at a framework hidden in the film's final scene that changes how you see everything that came before, let's begin where Coogler began. When you read Coogler's screenplay, not just watch the film, the opening sequence reveals something that didn't fully make the final cut. Annie's voiceover describes musicians across cultures who share the same supernatural gift. The Delta Blues isn't purely African American. It's the convergence of 3 colonized peoples' sacred traditions in one geographic location. All displaced. All carrying musical traditions that could, according to their cultures, literally conjure spirits. The bluesman is the synthesis, the inheritor of all 3. Remember this. We'll return to it when we examine the villain. Why does this matter? Because Remick, the Irish vampire, isn't random. In the screenplay's framework, he was once a Feli, a sacred musician. His people had the same gift as the griots. But colonization corrupted it, turned communion into consumption, turned someone who could connect souls across the veil into someone who devours them. Remick is a warning. What happened to Irish sacred tradition under colonialism could happen to Black sacred tradition under the logic of commerce. That's the hidden thesis. Now we need to understand the twins to see how Coogler builds it. Smoke and Stack left Mississippi 7 years before the film begins. They fled an abusive father, one so brutal that Smoke eventually killed him to protect his brother. They went to Chicago looking for freedom, for escape from Jim Crow terror. What did they find? Early in the film, 2 Black teenagers touch Smoke's truck. His response is immediate. He shoots them, not a warning, not words, just violence. The film never mentions this again. Most viewers forget it happened. But it's the key to understanding what Chicago made of these men. The North didn't elevate them, it weaponized them. They come back with money and guns and a capacity for violence that mirrors the father they fled. Stack tells their young cousin Sammy about their father. He was mostly good, but when he would drink, he'd turn into somebody else. The father was a musician. The father was a monster. The gift and the violence lived in the same man. Remember this. It explains the guitar. So the twins return home with Chicago written into their reflexes. But they're trying to build something different. The juke joint isn't a hustle. It's an attempt to create something generative rather than extractive. A gathering place. A space for community. For the music they lost when they went north. That transcendence scene where Sammy plays and ancestors appear across time. That's what they're trying to recover. That's roots. That's what the North couldn't give them. The film visually argues that the spiritual power lives in the South, in the original soil. The juke joint is their attempt to reconnect. But violence finds them anyway. It always does. There's a moment during the party. A worker with loaded dice cheats another man at the table. When he's caught, he pulls a razor and slashes the man's cheek. A wound that mirrors the scar Sammy will carry for 60 years after the vampire attack. The cheater is already functioning as a vampire. He feeds on his own community through deception. He draws blood when exposed. He leaves the same mark that the colonial predator will leave later that night. Coogler is showing us that the vampire principle is already operating inside the room before Remick ever arrives. And watch how the community responds. The cheater is thrown to the ground and stomped. On the dance floor, people are stomping to the music in the same rhythm. The communal body expelling the parasite in the sacred tradition it has left. The original church. The same feet that dance are the feet that deliver justice. There's a detail early in the film. The first customer pays for his drink with wooden nickels. Plantation currency. Money that only spends at the plantation store. Smoke is furious. He wants dollars. Wooden nickels are all they have. The math is devastating. 2 more months of this, and they'll be broke. Right back in the white man's pocket, like everyone else. The Juke joint is economically doomed. Enter Mary. She's white passing, 1/8 black. She offers to go outside, talk to the white strangers, bring their money in. She can leverage her proximity to whiteness for the benefit of the black establishment. This is the fatal calculation. The moment she crosses that threshold, the moment she tries to profit from whiteness, she becomes the vector. She comes back bitten, and she's the one who turns Stack. The film is making an argument here that's almost too provocative to state directly. Economic integration is the invitation. The path to solvency runs through the thing that will take your soul. Mary's calculation is the great migration in miniature. Also notice the timing of the Remnick's arrival. He comes just after Smoke is furious about being paid by plantation currency. If I can just access white money, we'll survive. And it works, briefly, until it doesn't. Until she comes back, transformed into something that attacks her own. What pulled Black Americans north? Economic opportunity. What did they have to do to access it? Integrate into white economic systems. Work in white factories. Live in cities structured by white capital. Adopt the logic of white commerce. Each calculation rational. Each calculation an invitation. So the migration promised survival. But what was traded for it? Now we need to talk about what's actually being lost. The Juke joint scene, the one where Sammy plays and time collapses. Ancestors appear. The boundaries between past and present dissolve. The music acts as a portal, a way of communing with the dead. Music as prayer. Music as portal. And what happens to sacred things when they enter the marketplace? Remember the screenplay's hidden thesis? Remick was once a Feli. Colonization turned him into a vampire. His gift didn't disappear. It corrupted. It now feeds on others rather than nourishing a community. What happened to the blues? It went north. It went electric. It went commercial. It became rock and roll, consumed by white audiences, detached from the sacred context that gave it meaning. The film is asking, was that survival or was that death? When Sammy drives north with the guitar, is he carrying the tradition forward or carrying it to its grave? This brings us to what that guitar actually represents. There's a lie at the center of this film. Stack tells Sammy the guitar belonged to Charlie Patton, won it off him in a card game. Sammy's eyes light up. He's been playing a legend's instrument. But after the massacre, Smoke tells him the truth. That's their daddy's guitar, the abusive father, the one who beat them, the one Smoke killed. Sammy has been carrying the literal instrument of the abuser as his tool of salvation. Remember what Stack said about their father. He was a musician who turned into a monster when he drank. Alcohol was also an outside influence that corrupted black communities. The gift and the violence lived in the same man. Now they live in the same object. And here's the turn. It's this guitar, the cursed inheritance, that wounds Remick. The silver resonator burns him. Notice how prayer has no effect on Remick. He even enjoys it. Again, it turns out what destroys evil is a tool that has connection to ancient tradition. The music, even if that wounded you, is the thing that gives you power. But there's one more element we need to understand. The war between two churches. Throughout Sinners, there's a war between two spiritual traditions. Most viewers see it as sacred versus secular. The church versus the juke joint. The righteous father versus the sinning son. But that's not what Coogler is doing. Sammy's father, Jedediah, is a pastor. He warns his son that dancing with the devil will bring the devil home. And superficially, the film proves him right. Evil does show up at the juke joint. But the film offers another theology. Delta Slim tells Sammy, "My uncle taught the word. Used to say I was swimming in temptation. But it's the same spirit that flow through us with this blues. Just flow a different way. More honest way if you ask me." Then he says something crucial. Blues wasn't put on us like that religion. We brought this with us from home. Let that land. Christianity was imposed, the blues was brought. One is colonial, one is ancestral. Jedediah represents institutional religion, the Christianity forced on enslaved Africans, used to justify their bondage, then internalized across generations. It's not false. Jedediah believes. But it's not original. It's not what came from home. The juke joint represents the older tradition, music that literally summons ancestors. Music continuous with what the griots did before the ships came. The film positions these as competing forces for Sammy's soul. The juke joint scene is more genuinely sacred than anything in the church. At the film's end, Sammy returns to his father's church, covered in blood. Jedediah demands he drop the guitar. Swear off the devil's music. Sammy can't do it. He drives north with the guitar clutched to his chest. This isn't rejection of spirituality. It's a choice between spiritualities. The colonized form and the original, freer form. And Sammy chooses the one that came from home. One more layer, and this one ties the spiritual argument together. Throughout the film, Smoke dismisses Annie's root work as superstition. He's been all over the world, war, Chicago gangways, and never seen magic work. But Annie makes him wear the Mojo bag anyway. And when Stack, now a vampire, tries to bite his brother, his fangs stop at the bag. The African spiritual tradition, the root work, the hoodoo, the practices that survived the Middle Passage, worked. It's the only thing that works against the corrupted colonial tradition that Remick represents. The film ends 60 years later. Sammy is now an old man. Stack walks in, still young. He offers Sammy immortality. Keep playing. No pain, live forever. Look at what Stack represents. He survived. He got out. He has eternity, wealth, freedom from physical suffering. He is assimilation's dark fulfillment, the endpoint of trading your soul for longevity. He can't see the sun, can't die naturally, can't feel truly free again. Immortality as spiritual death. The Great Migration offered longevity for the Black community in America. Survival, economic opportunity. Escape from the worst, terrorism. Stack is what that looks like, taken to its logical conclusion. He got longevity. He lost everything that made life worth living. And Sammy, carrying nightmares, playing the cursed guitar in dive bars, dying of liver failure. Sammy driving north at the end of the main story isn't triumphant. He's fleeing, wounded, carrying nightmares that will last 60 years. The migration was survival, not liberation. The Great Migration was an act of survival that Coogler frames as a necessary sin. Something you had to do. Something that cost you anyway. The title isn't an accusation, it's a diagnosis. There are no innocents in a system that forces you to choose between your soul and your life. So here's the film's final provocation. There was no right choice. Mississippi was a death trap. The North was a soul trap. The Klan owned the ground. The vampires waited outside. The father beat his children with the same hands that played the guitar. And still, for a few hours, between sunset and dawn, in a building that was already condemned, something sacred happened. The ancestors came. The music pierced the veil. The last church held its last service. Coogler built this film like a puzzle box. Every character choice, every economic detail, every musical cue points toward the same argument. We just followed the threads he left. That's our read through the burning glass, where we point out what the film is showing, one frame at a time. If it sparked something, like and subscribe for more.